found your body.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Okay, so as I said last week, this is part 2 of my look at the new releases from North Star. And as you know, last week we had a look at the single cask releases, and this week we're going to look at Iain's regional malts, I guess is probably the best way of describing them. So we have 4 bottlings which come from the various regions of Scotland. So as far as I'm aware, these will be an ongoing set of releases, rather than just a sort of like a one-off. So each of them is a vatting of 2 casks from the same distilleries. Now I know what the distilleries are for each of the bottlings, but interestingly enough, obviously Iain hasn't stated them on the labels, but what he has done is he's put the GPS coordinates on the labels. So a little bit of fun. So if you do buy a bottle, you can type the coordinates into Google, and you can find out which distilleries there are. So I'm not actually going to tell you what distilleries these bottlings come from, because that's just going to ruin the fun, isn't it? You know. Right. So a number of you have actually have ordered some or all or none. And those of you that haven't ordered any, you really should do, of the current releases from North Star. I believe I should be receiving the stock sometime around about the end of this week, so orders should hopefully be ready to go out at the beginning of the week after. So yeah, not really a great deal else to say apart from well, let's have a look at the lineup then, shall we? Now. Right, okay, so, as if by magic, a bodyguard appears. Look, Whisky, yes. Right, okay, we're going to kick off with the Highland Star. This is an 11-year-old, bottled at 50%. Like I said, 2 casks, 2 refill sherry butts, and well, not a great deal else to say apart from that's it. Then we're going to move on to the Speyside Star, which is a vatting of 2 refill sherry butts, a bottle of 50%. So it'll be interesting to see the difference between the two and see whether we get the sort of the classic sort of characteristics of those 2 particular regions. Third bottling we'll be looking at is this one. This is called the Highland Star. Again, this time it's a vatting of 2 refill bourbon hogsheads, and again bottled at 50%. And finally the Islay Star, which is an 11-year-old and is a vatting of 2 refilled bourbon hoggies. So yeah, that's the lineup. It's all pretty short and sweet, and well, hopefully the whiskies won't be short and sweet, or hopefully it'll be a bit longer than maybe sweet. Anyway, so without further ado, let's kick off with the Highland Star. Right, okay, so let's see what the Highland Star gives us then, shall we? Now, the sherry component is pretty light in actual fact. It's kind of just sitting in the background. It's adding a little bit of dried fruit, but the overwhelming characteristic is crisp and classically Highland. Quite minerally, touch of barley, touch of white fruit, and all backed up by a little bit of sherry sweetness, a little bit of dried fruit, touch of spice. Yeah, it's a lovely nose. I think this is actually gorgeous. It's got exactly what I would want from a Highland whisky. It's got the sort of like the minerality, the granitiness, the freshness, and a little bit of richness, you know, just behind all of that. Considering these are all going on the shelf at just a shade under 40 quid, I think, yeah, it's giving it a bit of time in aeration. I'm getting more of the barley coming through, sort of subtly sweet barley, but it really is quite minerally and really fresh. Let's see what the palate gives us. Chewy, malty finish, a bit richer, a bit fuller on the palate. There's a little bit more sherry character, a lot more dried fruit, a little bit of treacle, dark chocolate, but it's still got that real granity, grippy, fresh character. Lovely citric acidity, and it all kind of like, you know, melds in with the granite notes, and the finish is really quite nice and fresh and quite sort of palate cleansing, even though, like I said, it does kick off with a lot more of the sherry character, but I still think that's really well balanced. It's got enough complexity. I think it's certainly not what you might call sort of over brimming with complexity, but it's pleasant, it's clean, which is probably the most important aspect of it, and the cask selection, I think, it's been pretty good. So I think, you know, if you wanted a sort of like, you know, a good honest dram to kind of start the evening with, you know, that you don't actually have to think too much about, then, you know, I think this would be an ideal starter. So so yeah, an ideal starting point, I think. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Speyside style. Let's see what the note gives us on this end. Obviously slightly more active casks, well, definitely on the nose. I'm getting a lot more sherry, and it's a lot softer and it's rounded. It's kind of, I suppose, in the sort of Macallan-y sort of style, although it's not from Macallan. Oops, didn't mean to, well, there's one Speyside distillery you can cross off. Anyway, so yeah, we've got a bit of prune, a bit of treacle, bit of darker dried fruits, more raisinated in character. Must say less spirit character, but it's got a lovely softness, a lovely aromatic character. And I guess, you know, it's got that sort of Speyside softness to it. So again, I think sort of a pretty good representation of the Speyside region. Yeah, I mean, that's again really clean, no sulphur, no off notes. So if if you like, and this is not, I wouldn't say this is a sherry monster. I mean, it is more. Has more of the sherry character, but it's not an overall kind of Oloroso-y sort of leafy herbal kind of monster. There is a sort of, you can sort of sense the spirit character sort of beneath the sherry notes. So overall, I think again a pleasant nose. Let's see what the palate's like. Well, that's a big chewy finish, quite malty, more Oloroso-y character. There is a slight herbalness to that Oloroso. It's dark, it's juicy, dried fruit, figs, prunes, bit of plum, cinnamon, dark chocolate. Nice bittering in actual fact. I think sort of sometimes, you know, that kind of really helps. I mean, other times you don't really, sometimes the bitterness from the oak is a little intrusive, but in this instance it kind of works quite nicely to balance up the sweetness of the sherry cask and the richness, and so it adds a sort of a counterpoint, for want of a better word. And again, I mean, there's not a huge amount of discernible distillery character or spirit character. It is very much all about the sherry, but the sherry is very clean, it's very soft, and it's certainly going to appeal to, you know, people that enjoy that style of whisky. For me, of the two, I think I gravitate slightly more towards the Highland Star, but I think the Speyside Star is very pleasant, isn't it? Okay, so let's move on to the Island Star. So this is 2 refill hoggies. Let's see what those gives us on this then, shall we? Quite buttery, almost tropical. Lots of honey and barley, and it certainly had me going off down the wrong route, shall we say, when I was tasting this originally. I was certainly thinking it was a certain distillery that I really like, and it turns out that it's not. It's a completely different distillery, but it's got a touch of the coastal notes, a little bit of salinity. There's some gooseberry, maybe a bit of guava, green, sort of green melon, a touch of malt. It's got a nice richness, a nice roundness, and this is everything you'd kind of really want from an island whisky. I mean, it's not an exuberant tropical monster like Arran, so there you go. That's one distillery you can cross off the potential list of what it actually is. And I think when you do find out which distillery it comes from, you'll actually be pleasantly surprised. And if that hasn't given the game away, I don't know what has. Yeah, this is a lovely nose. I really like this. Yeah, it's got a lovely freshness to it. Like I said, the sort of the green citric fruit is kind of balancing up the slightly buttery oak and the barley. See what the palate gives us. Yeah, see what the palate gives us. Unless you're going to escape. Go on then. Off you go. Rich, buttery, slightly tropical, not quite as tropical as the nose would leave you to believe. Plenty of barley, bit of salt, whiff of smoke on the finish, a little bit of gritty tannin, a little bit of earth. It's kind of, you know, not 100% polished. It's got a little bit of a rough edge, but that rough edge is wonderfully controlled, and it's all quite harmonious, and it just goes to show that it's got pleasant levels of characteristics, and nice salty, sweet, little bit of heather now coming through right on the aftertaste. That is actually quite a lovely whisky, really complex for its age. And like I said, when you find out what distillery it actually comes from, you'll be going, So yeah, a big thumbs up to that one. And finally, let's take a look at the Islay Star. Let's see what the nose gives us on this then, shall we? Quite briny, plenty of sweet barley, a little bit of medicinal peat, gently peated. I mean, this is not a peat monster. This is, to me, quite classic. There is some lovely peat character, but there's also the lovely sweet barley beneath. There's a fleshy apricot, almost slightly banana-y note, a bit of menthol, seaweed. I mean, that is lovely. A little bit of iodine as well. Just caught a slight whiff of iodine there. It's kind of, again, I mean, this kind of encapsulates what I love about certain Islay whiskies. It's not all just about the big booming peat. There is some sweet spirit character beneath all of that, and I think a lot of people just seem to sort of lose sight of that. That they just kind of think Islay whiskies, they just think big peat, one-dimensional, and it's whiskies like this that just make you go, hang on a minute, it's not all just about the big peat. And but there's enough peat there to sort of like, you know, keep you interested, shall we say? Gosh, it's got a lovely sweetness. That's a gorgeous nose. Let's see what power's like. I bang on about progression, but this has a lovely progression. Kicks off with that sort of lovely salty, crisp Isle of freshness, and then you get a little bit of buttery oak, a little bit of fleshy barley, apricot, and then the peat comes through, sort of quite dusty, a little bit of medicinal notes, seaweed, more brine, chewy, lightly malted. I mean, that is absolutely fantastic. That is lovely. I mean, and you know, when you discover the distillery it comes from, it's not a surprise really. Well, it's just got such a lovely finish to it. Really salty, and it's kind of like almost kind of going full circle. Like I said, it kind of starts off with the sort of like, you know, the saltiness and the freshness, and it kind of almost kind of comes back around to that on the finish. I mean, that has just got a wonderful progression. So yeah, that's damn good. Right, okay, so let's sum this week's episode of the show up. Again, a selection of really good whiskies. I think Ian has picked out some exceptional casks for these regional bottlings, and you know, I think they'll sell well. I think, you know, I've certainly there's a few customers that have put their names on them, pretty much just based on my tasting notes. I'm hoping that this week's episode of the show will encourage a few more of you to stick your hand in your pocket for them, because I think they are very good. The Highland Star, yeah, I really liked that. I thought that was classically Highland, loads and loads of minerally, granity character, and balanced sherry. The sherry just sort of sitting in the background. Yeah, all right, the sherry was a little bit more noticeable on the palate, but the intrinsic sort of Highland character was still ever present and sort of really balanced up that sherry quite nicely. The Speyside Star, yeah, I mean, probably my least favoured, but then that's not a surprise given that it was pretty much all about the sherry. But the sherry was nice and soft and rounded, and you know, it's you choose your poison, so to speak, I guess. Still, the quality was really good, absolutely 100% blemish free, and really you can't ask for an awful lot more from a sherry cask, can you? The Island Star, yeah, I thought that was absolutely fantastic, and I think sort of gets an even bigger thumbs up, like I said, once you know what distillery it comes from. Yeah, it just had lots of island character, a slightly sort of tropical note, and a little bit of peat, a little bit of salt. You know, it was just sort of perfectly, I think, encapsulates the whole idea of the. Yes, indeed, the whole idea of the meow. Don't know where that one came from. Yeah, so it perfectly encapsulates the idea of the whole concept of an island whiskey. It just, to me, it just says island whiskey. And finally, the Isle Star. Well, the star of the show, I think, personally. I mean, you know, and not because it's the peated one. It just had sort of a lovely progression. Like I said, you know, kind of starting off with the sort of like the crisp, salty freshness, and moving through the oak and the spirit character and the peat, and then coming back to the crisp saltiness. It was just an all-round really good whiskey. And like I said, you know, for a shade under 40 quid, you know, you're not going to go wrong with these. These are really very good whiskies. So you really need to buy them, that's all I can say. Isn't that right, Buddy Cat? Yes. Okay, so that's this week's episode of the show in the bag. Another quickie, as they say, although not behind the bike sheds. And I'm not quite sure what I'm going to be doing next week, but I'm sure it will be fun nevertheless. And so until then, good afternoon and good gramming. Yes. Mm.